Hello, everyone. This is a story about how a wife had an affair in a van with a handyman while her husband was away. Please subscribe to the channel. It's not difficult for you, and it's nice for me. I am one of those people to whom others tend to open up. Recently, I spoke with an elderly man, and he unexpectedly shared with me about his childhood. He lived with his parents in an expensive house in the best part of town, with a huge garden and a stream at the back of the property. His mother left his father for a handyman who came to do some work around the house and moved with him to a slum in the city center, where the backyard had a shared toilet with the neighbors. More than 60 years later, he still couldn't recover from what had happened. It must have been some kind of magic that the seducer possessed, he said. This conversation served as the impetus for writing this story. I never thought I would write a story about reconciliation. Usually, that's not in my nature. In any case, there is an exception to every rule. There's nothing unacceptable here, so if this isn't in your spirit, please just pass by. Michael slowed down as he drove along the waterfront to let a passing bus go by. Even on this cloudy spring day, people were strolling along the seaside. Dogs chased balls, splashed in the water, and shook themselves dry. Grandparents watching their grandchildren rolled them in strollers past the sunken gardens and the lake. Michael always liked it here when he was a child. His parents often took him to the lake, letting him steer a tiny rented boat around a small island in the middle. He enjoyed those opportunities to take the wheel while his parents, cuddled together in the back seat, joked about his driving. God, those old boats smelled so bad, and they were so noisy. But he loved them. He loved that time. Now, there were only rowboats on the lake. It was quiet and more eco-friendly, but not as fun, Michael thought. His parents divorced when he was 9 years old. That was the biggest shock of his life. His parents always seemed so close. His friends' parents had divorced, but they didn't even seem to love each other. For Michael, it was obvious that his parents adored each other. That's why it made no sense that his mother would abandon all of that for an affair with the handyman who came to build a stone fireplace. No wonder the design became bigger and more elaborate. He obviously had his sights set on Mom. When she left, he watched her get into the work van. She looked uncertain, her shoulders slumped. Looking back, adult Michael saw her as the saddest woman in the world, not a woman engulfed in great passion. In his child's eyes, he just wanted his mom. He remembered the crash as his father smashed that fireplace, still in his office suit. He stacked each stone on the driveway before they were used to create countless rockeries in the neighborhood. The original fireplace was rebuilt, and his father never saw his mother again. Michael didn't see her often, but she was still his mom. She put up with his childish nature and then with teenage bitterness during the rare times they met. Michael finally turned into the parking lot of the retirement home overlooking the lake. It didn't look like any retirement home he had ever imagined. It looked more like a high-end hotel. It didn't resemble the dreary municipal homes with hallways smelling of cabbage. This place smelled of flowers, often fragrant lilies from fresh bouquets that were in every room. There was a piano in the foyer surrounded by mirrors. Additionally, there was a ballroom with a stage where many guest performers entertained. The first floor had various lounges, a game room, a library, and 2 restaurants. Living here cost thousands of pounds a month, even in the small rooms at the back of the house overlooking the garbage bins. The premier rooms were more like suites, with balconies and views of the lake and the beach behind it. His father, Samuel, lived in one of those rooms. His father was a wealthy man and apparently possessed considerable business acumen. He wouldn't have trouble covering the cost of living in the home, even if he lived to be 200 years old. Now, he was 82. He had made the decision to move into the retirement home. As his mobility declined, it became increasingly difficult for him to navigate his large house. He was in good physical shape and healthy in every other respect, so he didn't need caregivers. He needed companionship. Samuel missed having people around and someone to talk to. Of course, they could hire caregivers for company, but Samuel understood that would simply be a professional courtesy. They would be paid to show interest and listen. He wanted people to engage with him, to talk to people his age who understood what it was like when your body could no longer keep up with your active mind. That's why he decided to move to the retirement home, Resting Smugglers. It was the right decision. Although Michael was now very busy taking care of the numerous business interests that had passed down to him from his father, he could still visit him occasionally. They were very close and very similar. After the divorce, Samuel raised him alone. Generally speaking, it was unusual for a father to get custody of a child. However, it was not unusual if the father was wealthy and could afford to hire the best lawyers that money could buy. and when it could be proven that the mother had no financial means to support her son and had also cheated on her husband. In those days, women were judged harshly. She was condemned as a promiscuous woman. Michael certainly judged his mother harshly back then. He still condemns her almost 50 years later. He never forgave her for cheating on his father, for betraying their family. He needed her, and she abandoned him for some guy with no money to his name. She left her adoring husband, her loving son, and a beautiful home to live in a van in a farmer's field without plumbing. Yes, the guy must have offered her something really wonderful. Michael was pulled from his memories when Jenny, the receptionist, politely cleared her throat. "Sorry," Michael said. "I was miles away." "Where's Dad? Is he in his room or one of the lounges?" "No," Jenny replied. "He left in the minibus. He and your mom went shopping. They'll be back in about 15 minutes." It took Michael a moment to process what he had heard. "What do you mean, my mom?" "My father divorced my mother 48 years ago. Whoever he's with, it's definitely not my mother." Jenny looked concerned at Michael's sudden outburst of anger. He was usually such a nice, gentle man. She didn't want to upset him. Mr. Jennings, the manager, approached. "Jenny is right. Mr. and Mrs. Jones went shopping together." "Mrs. Jones? Mrs. Marcia Jones?" "Yes," Mr. Jennings said. "Your mother recently moved in here. Your parents spend a lot of time together." "Well, actually, they spend all their time together. She booked one of the standard rooms at the back of the hotel, but Mr. Jones insisted she move into his suite. He said she would like the view from the window better." "Are you all right, Mr. Jones? You look a bit pale. Please sit down, and I'll ask someone to bring tea, I think with a lot of sugar." Michael walked into the nearest lounge, sat down on one of the very large, expensive sofas, and stared out the large panoramic window, barely seeing the promenade, the lake, or the beach. "Well then, Mr. Jones, you don't mind if I call you Michael? By the way, I'm Jason. I can see I've shocked you. I assumed you knew your parents were together. I apologize. It was unprofessional of Jenny to mention it in that manner, but it was done completely innocently. She's a lovely girl," he smiled, looking at the charming Jenny. If only he were 10 years younger, well, 20 years younger, he would have happily made her Jenny Jennings. "Shocked me? My parents have been divorced for almost 50 years, Jason, so you could say that. I can't believe it. I've seen her from time to time over the years. As far as I know, my father hasn't seen her since he kicked her out of our house many years ago. After that, he raised me alone. Although, when I became an adult, he remarried. That didn't last long. He's been single for the last 20 years. "And your mother?" Jason asked quietly. "Well, she left for a man, left my father, but that man died shortly after. I haven't seen her in 10 years. We lost touch after she got upset that she wasn't invited to my wedding. I was 46 when I got married. I had trust issues after what happened with my parents. Luckily, I eventually found the right person for me, and by the time I was 50, I was already the father of 2 children. Oh yes, I saw the boys when they came to visit Grandpa Sam. He is very proud of them, and you. He talks a lot about you and your charming wife. A daughter he never had, he calls her that. My wifey loves all the fuss he makes over her, and she reciprocates. She really wanted Dad to move in with us, but he refused and chose to move here as the easiest option for everyone." "So your mom never met your family?" "No, although she knows about them. We may not be in contact, but we're close with her sister, my Aunt Sue. I told Sue I didn't mind her sharing pictures, but I didn't want to communicate with my mother." "Well, that explains everything." "What exactly?" "Well, before she moved out of one of our one of our standard rooms, all the surfaces and most of the walls were covered with your photographs and your son's. She also kept a picture of your father in his youth by her bed, although we recognized him anyway." "You mean to say you encouraged this reconciliation, Jason?" "No, quite the opposite, Michael. We were worried that Samuel would get angry to find his ex-wife here. Of course, he is one of our privileged guests and had already lived here before Mrs. Jones moved in. If he had been upset about it, we would have gently asked Marcia to leave." "Then why didn't you do that?" "Well, as soon as I was informed, I went to talk to your father, and, well, What? "Well, let's just say I discovered that Mr. and Mrs. Jones came to an understanding themselves." Michael looked at Jason's flushed face, which was trying not to meet his gaze. "Are you trying to tell me you saw my parents in an unusual situation, Jason?" "Yes, I was afraid he had fallen, and I heard noises, so I used my access key. I understand that some of our more active residents sneak around the hallways at night. However, I myself witnessed such a thing for the first time. I apologize. Well, Jason, I hope you're well paid. That's all I can say, Michael scoffed. You're not thrilled with this news, aside from the shock? No, I'm not happy that my parents reconciled after so many years, and I have to wonder about my mother's plans. There are plenty of women who would settle for far worse for such a lovely room and view as this, and I unfortunately already know about her low morals. However, your dissatisfied expression when you told this story greatly amused me. Yes, Jason said, it wasn't my finest hour, and it was certainly a shock. So my mom kept all those photos Aunt Sue sent her? She framed them, and some of them she hung on a large canvas on the wall. Well, Michael said, that pleases me. It means she still cares about Dad. Has my father seen her room? He saw it when he asked her to move into his suite. He seemed particularly touched by the photograph she kept by her bed. Oh, and there's the minibus. I'll leave you alone. I'm sure you'll want to talk to them both. Michael turned his head and saw his father descending the ramp from the back of the van. His mom looked as charming as ever, her once blonde hair now mostly white from being cropped short. She still had a slender figure and good posture despite the diamond-studded cane she held in her hand. As he turned the chair, his father smiled at Marcia, and she looked at him with love. It was the same look Michael remembered from childhood, the same look she had given his father at the stern of the boat on the lake many years ago. Michael suddenly felt angry. Why now? Why couldn't they have forgiven each other all those decades ago? He was already over 50 and had begun using his own geriatric version of the parental trap. Many years ago, he had prayed for his parents to be together again. He prayed to God and even asked Santa Claus. All in vain. Too late, he thought. Too late. Michael, Sam said, approaching on a wheeled walker. I was told you were here. What a pleasant surprise. How are the boys doing? Did they win their football match? Are you completely alone now, Dad? Where did Mom go? She has a knack for disappearing, doesn't she? Don't be like that, son. I'm sure this is a shock to you, but if you want, I can explain. Michael remained silent until he suddenly said, Oh, please do. It's important. I need to hear. I regret how I behaved all those years. I regret what I did. You have nothing to apologize for. It's all her fault. Yes, I understand perfectly well what your mother did. It broke my heart. I felt it was unforgivable. I loved her so much that I couldn't get past it. I kicked her out and refused to have anything to do with her. She caused me too much pain. She left us. She abandoned us. But she didn't want to. She wanted to stay with me, but I was so angry. I was in so much pain that I refused to listen. Her infidelity became an obstacle to reconciliation for me. In the end, even though I loved her, even though I knew she regretted it, I couldn't forgive her. At the time, I was sure I was doing the right thing. By the time I realized I had made a mistake, it was too late. I waited a long time before starting other relationships. You know how they turned out. It wasn't those women's fault. They loved me, but they weren't your mother. Dad, are you seriously trying to tell me you spent 50 years pining for a woman who cheated on you? No, not exactly. To some extent, I moved on. I've succeeded in my life, but it's true that I never stopped loving her. I never stopped regretting that I couldn't find a shred of compassion in my heart for her. She caused me pain, but I was unjustly cruel to her. I took everything from her. Friends, family, status, but most of all, I took you from her. That was the cruelest thing of all. I punished her, but it was her fault. She made a mistake, just one mistake. Deciding to leave for another man wasn't a mistake. That was her choice. Well, she regretted that choice very quickly. One day he got her drunk. I know she shouldn't have put herself in that position. I know she was wrong, and her being drunk is no excuse, but she was manipulated. I should have protected her, but I didn't. Dad, why do you blame yourself? Is it because you're so lonely here, and you desperately need company? No, I wasn't lonely, even before she arrived. Moving here was the right decision. It really is quite simple. It's because I still love her. My life would be better if she were here. I don't have much time left, and I'm not wasting it anymore. I need to be with my beloved again before it's too late. Dad, this new relationship isn't serious. Have you forgotten that? I didn't leave her a choice. She had no other option but to go with him. I made sure she had no one else to turn to. That's my greatest regret. I don't know what to say. I need to talk to Mom. She's at the bar. I think she needs a little pick-me-up. Michael looked at his watch and muttered, It's not even noon yet. Samuel chuckled. When you're as old as the residents here, it really doesn't matter. We try to enjoy ourselves when we can. Just try not to be so judgmental, Michael. You're just like me. That's exactly how I was before, and look where it got me. It cost us. Marcia Jones was sitting in a quiet corner of the bar, sipping from a large glass of rose wine. It was clear that she had been crying. Even after everything that had happened, it was hard for Michael to see his mother upset. He offered her his handkerchief. Just like your father. He always has a real handkerchief. How are you, Mom? I'm glad to see you. I'm happy to see your father again, to spend some time with him, and I'm terribly afraid you won't approve. When did you start worrying about what I think? You haven't cared about my opinion since I was 9 years old. Marcia took a deep breath. No, that's not true. I've always cared about you and loved you. Those last 10 years when I didn't see you almost killed me. I know I let you down, and I know I don't deserve this. But I want you to love me again. Michael sighed and absently rubbed his hands on his thighs. I've always loved you, Mom. I just don't like you very much. It's funny that I didn't want to see you at my wedding because I felt I had to choose between you and Dad. I chose him and completely lost you. Now you two live together, like a childhood dream, and it seems like the last 50 years never happened. I never stopped loving Samuel. He has always been the love of my life. I'm not ready to lose him again. I can't give him up. Not even for you. Then why? You don't deceive people if you love them. I understand. I've had all these decades to think about why I did what I did. Back then, I knew I was attractive. You were beautiful, Michael simply said. Well, your father always said so. Jeff was working around the house, and we started talking. He clearly indicated that he found me attractive and flirted with me while I served him a cup of tea. I admit, I enjoyed the attention. It seemed harmless. One day, he pulled a bottle of wine from his work bag, and I gave in. It's not an excuse, but he definitely knew what he was doing. At first, I even tried to say no, but in the end, I succumbed to temptation. It just seemed easier to give in. Then I felt so ashamed. I washed myself in the shower. I hated it. I hated that he used me and that I had given in so easily. Before this, your father was with me, and now I had only pleasure without love, and I felt dirty. That's how your father found us. I was in the shower, and Jeff was sprawled on the bed in the guest room with a wide grin on his face. It was obvious what had happened. Your father didn't give me a chance to explain. And why should he apologize? I didn't deserve explanations. I didn't deserve his forgiveness. And yet, in the end, you ended up with Jeff in that little van, so it must not have bothered you that much. Yes, that was my biggest mistake of all. When your father kicked me out, Jeff was waiting at the end of the driveway. I shouldn't have gotten into his van. What was I thinking? He said he would give me a ride to the station. Of course, I ended up in his van, but I didn't see him for some time afterward. When I did, it was my punishment for what I did, for what I lost. All these years I wondered if I would have had a chance at forgiveness if I had just moved on instead of going with him. I was so foolish and only made things worse. I stupidly clung to a person who became the cause of my downfall. Eventually, we established a sort of relationship. I think Jeff felt guilty in his own way. There was no love between us, at least from my side. When Jeff was drunk, he told me he loved me, but never when he was sober. This was shortly before he died in that accident in his van. By that time, your Aunt Sue was speaking to me again, and she settled me into a small apartment and found me a job as a secretary. Only much later did I realize your father was behind it. His business partner gave me the job, and his money went toward the deposit for the apartment. In the end, he still cared for me a little. So how did you end up here? I doubt your pension allows you to stay here longer than a few months. I won a scratch card for £100,000. I figured it would help me buy a few years here, where I would be fed, watered, and cared for without worrying about anything. The money wasn't wasted. You see, I was so lonely. Even if I didn't make friends, I could still socialize, be among people, rather than alone. And then you saw Dad. Yes, I thought my heart would leap out of my chest. I was waiting for his anger, his disdain, and he just smiled at me. He looked at his friends and said, "You'll have to excuse me. I'll step away for a moment. I need to go talk to my wife." He told them I was his wife. Imagine, after 48 years of longing, to hear him say it so easily, as if he really meant it. I think he really does feel that way, Michael said. He still loves you. Clearly, no other woman measured up to his memories of you. And yet, you ruined his life, yours and mine, until I met Eve. How does that line from Larkin's poem go? They ruined you, your mom and dad. And you two certainly ruined me. Samuel listened silently and settled next to Marcia. You should remember the next line of that poem, son. They didn't mean it, but it happened. None of our mistakes should have harmed you, but we both regret what happened. You're 25 years older than we were when we made those mistakes. You're a mature man. So will you support us when you recover from the shock? Michael drummed his fingers on the table for a while. His gaze was fixed on the floral display behind his parents' backs. Finally, he spoke. What I say doesn't matter. You both clearly made it known that you don't want to separate again. So my objections will fall on deaf ears. It seems you two have practically rewritten history. I'll agree with your version if it brings you pleasure. I can pretend, but you both must know that I don't believe it. You seem to have created a scenario where Mom became the victim of a manipulator who said no before giving in to ease the situation. It's easier to take pleasure, Mom. You forget that I witnessed some of the scenes. I know how far you went with your flirting. Maybe you got away with it at the golf club dances when Dad was busy with business. His friends knew not to go too far. They knew you didn't mean it. However, Jeff was a completely different person, wasn't he? Once he thought you wanted this, you got it. Maybe you didn't enjoy it. Maybe you felt ashamed and dirty. I believe that, but you were still a married woman inappropriately flirting with a stranger. You chose to go with him and then live with him. We know all this, son, Samuel said. Haven't we been paying for it all these years? Can't you just forget about it? It's history. We can just leave it in the past. Oh, I'll forget about it. I told you I would pretend. I'll even bring Eve and the boys to visit Grandma and Grandpa this evening. I'll play my role well, and over time, I might even be grateful that you're together again. I just wanted you both to know that I won't rewrite my story, even if I can try to look to the future. Thank you, son, Samuel said. You're better than we deserve. Michael stood up to leave. He always kissed his father on the crown of his head when he left him. Today he hesitated before doing the same with his mother and quickly exited the bar. Soon he would need to return to the office, and he would need to have a serious talk with Eve and maybe hug her before he could continue with his workday. As he drove out of the parking lot, Michael looked at the lake and thought of that young couple and their little son who had been boating many years ago, and he smiled.